The last warmth of the sun lingered only as a memory upon the hills of the Peloponnese. Day had not ended suddenly, nor had darkness arrived with urgency. Instead, the evening unfolded with the slow certainty of something ancient, remembering its place in the world. The golden light that had rested upon stone walls, quiet fields, and distant mountain ridges gradually softened into bronze, then into deep violet, and finally into the gentle blue of approaching night. This was a land shaped by patience. Its valleys had waded through thousands of seasons. Its mountains had watched generations come and go without ever shifting. From their silent stations, its olive trees had twisted themselves toward countless suns, each ring within their ancient trunks holding years beyond memory, years too numerous to count, years that no living voice could fully recall. A traveler walked slowly along a narrow path of pale stone that wound through the valley. There was no urgency in the walk. There was nowhere that demanded arrival before night. The path itself seemed to understand this, bending gently between old olive groves, as though inviting every step to become slower than the last. Small, rounded stones rested beneath worn sandals, polished smooth by centuries of feet that had crossed this same quiet valley. Shepherds, farmers, merchants, pilgrims, messengers, philosophers, families, returning home beneath evening skies. Their footsteps had long faded. Only the path remained. The traveler breathed quietly, allowing the cooling air to fill the lungs with the scent of dry earth, slowly releasing the warmth gathered beneath the bright Greek sun. All day the ground had stored the sun's fire within its stones. Now, as twilight deepened, that warmth drifted gently upward, meeting the cool breeze descending from the mountains. The meeting of warm earth and cool air carried a fragrance unlike any other. Wild thyme grew between cracks in the rocks. Its tiny leaves released their gentle aroma with every breath of wind. Nearby, rosemary bushes rested in silence, the scent of old stone mixed with herbs that had grown here since long before kingdoms, rose, or temples were built. There was no sharpness to the smell. It was soft, familiar, and comforting. It belonged entirely to this valley. The olive trees stood quietly on either side of the path, their trunks curved in impossible ways. Some seemed almost sculpted by invisible hands, their bark folded into deep grooves that spiraled around trunks older than memory itself. Others leaned gently toward one another as though sharing conversations that had lasted hundreds upon hundreds of years. Their silver-green leaves stirred gently overhead, not loudly, never loudly. Only the smallest whisper traveled from branch to branch, a quiet rustling, a delicate brushing. The leaves spoke in voices too soft for words. They simply moved together whenever the evening breeze passed through them, and then became perfectly still once more. Again, the breeze arrived. Again, the leaves answered. Again, silence returned. The traveler paused beneath one particularly ancient tree. Its trunk was wider than several people standing shoulder to shoulder. The roots emerged from the earth like slow rivers of wood before disappearing once more beneath. The rocky soil. Moss clung to shaded places where the afternoon sun rarely reached. Tiny flowers, nearly hidden among the grasses, rested peacefully around its base. Looking upward, the branches stretched wide across the evening sky. Between their leaves, the first stars had begun to appear, one by one, patiently, without haste. The traveler remained still for several moments. There was no need to continue walking immediately. Nothing in this valley encouraged hurry. Everything seemed to exist according to a rhythm older than clocks, older than calendars, older even than written history. The mountains watched over everything. They rose beyond the olive groves with quiet strength, their ridges becoming darker as the final colors of sunset withdrew from their slopes. They were immense without appearing threatening. Their silence was not empty. It was protective, like ancient guardians, like patient giants who had chosen long ago to stand watch forever. Their peaks caught the last fading light before surrendering completely to the coming night. Soon they became deep blue silhouettes against the heavens. The traveler continued onward. Some distance away, the gentle sound of flowing water became clearer. Not rushing, not roaring, only moving, always moving. A narrow river wound peacefully through the valley floor, its course following curves that seemed as natural as breathing. The water had traveled this same path for countless generations, polishing stones smooth beneath its surface while reflecting every sky above it. As the traveler approached the riverbank, the moon slowly lifted itself above the eastern hills. It appeared quietly, without announcement, without spectacle, a pale silver circle rising into an already darkening sky. Its light spread across the valley with extraordinary gentleness. The river accepted that light immediately. Tiny ripples carried silver reflections downstream, breaking the moon into countless, shimmering fragments before gently joining them together again. The water neither hurried nor delayed its journey. It simply continued, always flowing, always reflecting, always calm. The traveler knelt beside the river. Cool fingers touched the surface. The water welcomed them without resistance. Small circles expanded outward, across the moonlit reflection, until they disappeared into perfect stillness once again. Nearby, smooth stones rested half beneath the current. Each one had been shaped over hundreds or perhaps thousands of years. Edges softened, corners rounded, every roughness slowly worn away by patient water. Nothing here happened quickly, nothing needed to. The valley understood time differently. Here, centuries were only seasons unfolding one after another. The traveler stood once more and followed the river until an old stone pavilion appeared among the olive trees. Its columns were simple, not grand, not towering. Built from pale limestone gathered from nearby hills, the pavilion rested upon a small rise overlooking both river and valley. Weather had softened every sharp edge. Rain had polished its steps. Wind had brushed its surfaces smooth through endless seasons. Yet nothing essential had changed. Stone remained stone, firm, steady, permanent. The pavilion had welcomed travelers for generations beyond counting. Perhaps a shepherd once rested here after leading sheep through summer pastures. Perhaps an elderly philosopher had paused beneath its roof to escape the midday sun. Peaceful festivals, long forgotten by history. The pavilion remembered none of their names, yet it remembered every quiet moment, every peaceful evening, every gentle breath, every resting traveler. The traveler climbed the worn steps slowly. Each stone held the day's remaining warmth, not hot, only pleasantly warm, the kind of warmth that reassures rather than surprises. Inside, the pavilion was wonderfully still. 4 ancient columns supported a simple stone roof beneath which cool evening shadows gathered peacefully. Beyond the open sides stretched the entire valley, bathed now in soft moonlight. No walls were needed. The mountains themselves formed the shelter. The valley itself formed the embrace. The traveler sat upon a smooth stone bench. The body settled naturally. Shoulders relaxed. Hands rested quietly. Breathing became slower. The breeze continued its gentle journey through the olive branches. Leaves whispered softly. The river flowed steadily below. Somewhere in the distance, an owl called once into the growing darkness. Then, silence returned. Not empty silence, living silence. A silence woven together from countless quiet sounds so gentle they almost disappeared into one another. The soft brushing of leaves, the distant movement of water, the faint sigh of evening wind crossing dry grasses, the quiet breathing of someone completely at rest. The traveler closed tired eyes for a few moments. Behind closed eyelids, darkness felt warm rather than empty. The scent of thyme drifted through the pavilion. Old stone carried the memory of countless sunsets. The earth beneath everything cooled, little by little. Heat slowly left the rocks. Warmth slowly entered the night. Nothing resisted this change. The valley accepted evening completely. The mountains accepted evening completely. The river accepted evening completely. The traveler accepted evening completely. Far overhead, more stars appeared. At first, there had been only a handful. Now dozens filled the sky. Soon, hundreds. Ancient sailors once trusted. These same stars, too, guide wooden ships across the Aegean Sea. Farmers had watched them while tending vineyards. Children had listened to stories beneath their light. Wise teachers had pointed toward constellations while speaking of heroes, gods, and the endless heavens above Greece. Tonight, the stars needed tell no stories. Simply existing was enough. Their quiet light rested gently upon olive leaves, pale stone, distant mountains, and the silver ribbon of the river. Nothing asked more of them. Nothing asked more of the traveler. Time itself seemed to slow beneath that immense sky. Moments stretched softly into one another. Breaths became longer. Thoughts became lighter. Only peace belonged here. Only patience. only quiet endurance. The olive trees had survived storms. The mountains had survived earthquakes. The river had survived drought and flood. Everything solid remained. Everything permanent continued. The traveler rested securely among these enduring companions. No danger crossed the valley. Only the endless conversation between wind and leaves continued. Always gentle, always familiar, always the same. The breeze arrived. The leaves answered. Silence returned. The rhythm repeated without effort. Like slow breathing, like the peaceful beating of a heart entirely free from worry. The moon climbed higher. Its silver light grew brighter upon the river. The mountains became deeper shadows. Still, the traveler remained seated. Still, the valley rested. Still, the olive trees whispered. Still, the ancient stones held their patient watch. Nothing needed changing. Everything already belonged exactly where it had always belonged. The earth continued cooling. The fragrance of thyme remained gentle upon the air. Old stone released the last traces of sunlight. The river flowed quietly beneath the moon. The mountains watched in perfect silence. The stars multiplied overhead. The traveler listened until the quiet sounds became so familiar that they no longer seemed separate from the slow rhythm of breathing itself. The valley, ancient beyond memory, settled completely into the embrace of night. And within its timeless stillness, every breath carried only one gentle certainty. Here, nothing hurried. Here, beneath whispering olives and endless stars, the ancient land itself became a place of complete safety, complete stillness, and profound rest. The valley remained quiet long. After the traveler had rested within the ancient stone pavilion, the olive trees continued their endless whispering beneath the moon, and the river carried silver reflections through the sleeping earth with the same patient rhythm it had followed for countless generations. Nothing disturbed the stillness. Nothing hurried the passing of the night. Every stone remained where it had always rested. Every mountain continued its silent watch beneath the stars. After a long and peaceful pause, the traveler slowly rose. There was no urgency in the movement. The body had rested deeply among the old stones, and the quiet strength of the valley lingered within every breath. The path leading onward seemed already prepared, pale beneath the moonlight, winding gently beyond the olive groves, toward the distant coast where the great sea waited in complete tranquility. Each step was soft upon the earth. The ground had fully surrendered the warmth of the day. Now it felt cool beneath worn sandals, steady and welcoming. Dry grasses brushed lightly against the edges of the path, their delicate stems bowing beneath the slow breeze before returning to stillness. The scent of wild thyme gradually blended with another fragrance, carried from far, away, salt, only the faintest trace at first, a whisper upon the wind. Then, with every slow step, the scent became clearer, mingling with wild sage growing among pale rocks that lined the hillside. The herbs released their quiet perfume into the cool night air, blending earth and sea. into one gentle breath that filled the valley and stretched toward the distant coast. The mountains slowly fell behind. They remained visible beneath the stars, standing exactly as they always had, immense and protective, their dark silhouettes never abandoning the land they guarded. Though the traveler walked farther from them, their silent presence continued to offer comfort. Ahead, the land opened. The hills became gentler. The air became cooler. The moon climbed higher into the great dome of heaven, pouring silver light across every stone, every shrub, every quiet path. There was no harshness, only calm, only stillness, only the endless unfolding of midnight. Soon, another sound appeared. At first, it was almost impossible to distinguish from silence itself. A slow movement, a distant breathing, a rhythm that neither began nor ended. The sea. Its voice reached the traveler long before its waters came into view. Wave after wave arrived upon the unseen shore. Wave after wave quietly withdrew. Nothing crashed. Nothing roared. The sea breathed exactly as the earth breathed, slowly, patiently, without effort. The traveler continued toward that peaceful rhythm. The path descended gently through weathered limestone, outcroppings where tiny sage plants grew between, cracks in the ancient rock. Their silver-green leaves shimmered beneath the moonlight, almost like the olive leaves left behind in the valley. Everything in this land seemed connected. Stone to mountain, mountain to valley, valley to river, river to sea, sea to sky, sky to stars. Nothing stood alone. Everything belonged. The scent of salt became richer now. Cool sea air drifted inland without haste, brushing gently across the traveler's face. It carried freshness, unlike the warm valleys beyond. Yet it possessed the same reassuring patience. The breeze arrived. It lingered, then passed onward. Again, it returned. Again, it lingered. Again, it continued its endless journey. Every breath became slower. Every thought became lighter. The path finally reached the edge of a quiet cliff overlooking the endless waters of the Aegean Sea. Below, the shoreline curved gently around the base of pale stone cliffs. There was no sandy beach, only thousands upon thousands of smooth, dark pebbles resting together where the sea met the land. Each pebble had once been rough. Each had once possessed sharp edges. Yet the patient rhythm of water had slowly shaped every surface. Century after century, wave after wave, touch after gentle touch. Now they rested together in perfect smoothness. The tide approached. The water slipped softly across the pebbles. A long whisper filled the night. Then the sea quietly retreated. The pebbles answered with their own delicate murmur as the water slipped back between them. Again, the tide returned. Again, it whispered. Again, it withdrew. The rhythm never changed. The rhythm never hurried. The traveler stood for a long while, simply listening. The waves breathed. The earth listened. The stars watched. Nothing else existed. Far above the shoreline, resting upon the cliff itself, stood a solitary sanctuary of white marble. Its columns rose into the moonlight with complete simplicity. There were no bright colors, no banners, no fires, no voices, only marble, only stone, only silence. Generations had passed through this sacred place long ago, offering quiet prayers beneath open skies. But now, the sanctuary belonged entirely to the night. Time had softened every corner. Wind had polished every surface. Rain had vanished the marble until it glowed softly beneath the moon, like calm water frozen into stone. The traveler walked slowly toward the temple. Each marble step reflected silver light. The stairs seemed almost luminous against the darkness surrounding them. Their surfaces were cool beneath gentle footsteps. Yet, beneath that coolness rested enormous strength. These stones had endured countless winters and summers. Storms had crossed this cliff. Earthquakes had shaken the hills. Empires had risen and disappeared beyond the horizon. Still, the marble remained. Still, the columns stood. Still, the sanctuary welcomed silence. The traveler climbed without effort. At the top, the temple opened toward the sea. Tall white columns framed the endless horizon. No doors closed the sanctuary. No walls separated sky from earth. The sea breeze wandered freely between every pillar. It entered softly. It circled gently. It departed quietly, then returned again. The marble seemed almost alive beneath the moonlight. Soft veins within the stone shimmered faintly like quiet rivers flowing. Beneath calm snow, each column rose straight and unwavering toward the roof overhead, carrying its immense weight without strain. Nothing about them suggested movement. Nothing suggested uncertainty. They simply stood, steady, enduring, permanent. The traveler rested upon the broad marble floor. The stone felt cool, smooth, comforting. It held the memory of countless peaceful nights exactly like this one. The sea continued breathing below, wave after wave, always returning, always retreating, never tiring. The sound reached the sanctuary without interruption. It entered between the columns, filled the quiet space, then drifted gently upward into the stars. Breathing naturally began to follow that same rhythm. A slow breath in, a slow breath out. The sea arrived, the sea departed, again and again and again. The rhythm required no thought. It simply existed. The midnight sky stretched endlessly overhead. The stars had become almost beyond counting now. Constellations familiar to ancient navigators crossed the heavens exactly as they had thousands of years before. Sailors once trusted these stars while crossing these same waters in wooden ships whose sails quietly gathered the evening wind. Tonight, there were no ships, no lanterns, no distant voices. The sea belonged only to itself. The traveler listened carefully. Even the smallest sounds seemed gentle. The breeze moving between marble columns, the tide washing over smooth stones, The faint rustle of wild sage growing beside the sanctuary walls. Nothing more. Silence wrapped around every sound, like soft cloth, allowing each one to appear briefly before dissolving peacefully into the next. Time seemed to disappear. The moon crossed slowly above the sanctuary. Its silver light shifted gently across the marble floor. Columns cast long, pale shadows that gradually changed shape, without anyone noticing exactly when. Everything moved so slowly that movement itself became another form of stillness. The traveler remained seated. Hands rested quietly upon cool marble. Eyes drifted toward the endless sea. The horizon disappeared into darkness, where water and sky became one. There was no boundary, only quiet infinity. Somewhere below, another wave reached the pebbles. The whisper returned, soft, steady, familiar. The water withdrew. Tiny stones answered. Then silence. Again the wave returned. Again the whisper. Again the answer. Again silence. Again, again, again. Nothing interrupted the eternal conversation. Between sea and shore, the sanctuary itself seemed to breathe with the tide. Columns welcomed the breeze. Marble welcomed the moonlight. The open roof welcomed the stars. Everything accepted exactly what arrived. Nothing resisted. Nothing demanded more. The scent of salt remained gentle upon the air. Wild sage released its calming fragrance whenever the breeze brushed its leaves. The coolness of the marble steadied every breath. The immense sea stretched beyond imagination, without threatening the quiet sanctuary that overlooked it. Instead, the vastness became comforting. The endless horizon carried no uncertainty. It carried only peace, only patience, only the slow rhythm that had continued since the beginning of memory. The traveler felt entirely safe within the embrace of stone and sea. Behind, the land rested beneath its mountains. Ahead, the waters rested beneath their stars. Above, the heavens remained clear beyond measure. Below, the tide continued its endless breathing. The marble columns stood without effort, heavy, unyielding, faithful. They had watched moon after moon cross the sky. They had witnessed centuries of calm nights, exactly like this one. They would remain long after countless more nights had quietly passed. There was deep comfort in their permanence. There was deep comfort in the endless sea. There was deep comfort in knowing that nothing needed to change. The breeze entered once more between the white columns. It carried salt. It carried sage. It carried coolness. Then it drifted onward across the sanctuary before, disappearing into the darkness. Above the cliffs, the sea answered. Another wave, another whisper, another slow retreat. The traveler closed gentle eyes. Behind closed eyelids, the rhythm remained. The sea arrived. The sea departed. Breathing followed. The heart followed. Thoughts gradually became as smooth as the dark pebbles below, shaped by countless gentle waves until every sharp edge had quietly disappeared. Nothing remained except peaceful rhythm, stone, sea, moonlight, stars, salt upon the air, sage upon the hillside, marble beneath resting hands, the slow breathing of the tide. Again the waves arrive. Again they departed. Again they arrived. Again they departed. The sanctuary watched without speaking. The sea breathed without tiring. The stars shone without effort. The traveler rested completely within the timeless embrace of the ancient coast, where marble, stronger than memory and waters, older than history, surrounded every quiet breath with absolute safety, endless patience, and the profound stillness of the midnight Aegean. The sanctuary above the quiet Aegean remained wrapped in moonlight, long after the traveler had settled. Upon its cool marble floor, the white columns continued their silent watch over the endless sea, and the gentle tide below never abandoned its patient rhythm. Wave after wave reached the smooth, dark pebbles. Wave after wave withdrew. The breeze wandered softly between the columns, carrying the familiar scent of salt and wild sage, before drifting inland once more. Nothing disturbed the temple. Nothing disturbed the sea. Nothing disturbed the stars. Everything remained exactly as it had been through countless peaceful nights. When the traveler finally rose again, the movement was almost too slow to notice. There was no purpose beyond continuing the quiet journey that the ancient land itself seemed to offer. Every place welcomed rest. Every path invited slower steps. Every breath carried the same timeless assurance that nothing here needed to hurry. Leaving the marble sanctuary behind, the traveler followed an old limestone road that curved gently away from the cliffs and gradually returned toward the interior of the Peloponnese. The sea continued breathing behind. The hills waited ahead. The moon climbed steadily across the heavens. Its silver light rested upon every stone of the ancient path, making each pale slab glow softly against the darkness. Centuries of travelers had worn these stones smooth. Sandals had crossed them. Bare feet had crossed them. Quiet pilgrims had crossed them beneath skies almost identical to this one. Their footsteps had faded. The path remained. The limestone still held a memory of the warmth gathered during the long summer day. Yet that warmth was fading now. Little by little, the night's cool breath settled into the stone. Every passing hour allowed the earth to release another small measure of heat into the waiting darkness. The cooling happened so slowly that it seemed almost impossible to perceive. Yet it continued, patiently, quietly, without interruption. The traveler noticed the subtle change beneath each step. The stone no longer carried the lingering warmth of evening. Instead, it offered gentle coolness, comforting, steady, like placing a hand upon an ancient wall that had rested beneath moonlight for centuries. The breeze shifted. The scent of salt gradually became lighter. In its place arrived another fragrance, pine, soft at first, then deeper, then richer. The hills ahead were covered with forests whose branches had gathered the night within themselves. Resin rested quietly inside thick bark, warmed earlier by the sun. releasing its gentle perfume into the cool air. Pine needles carpeted the forest floor, carrying their own calm fragrance that blended with damp earth beneath them. The traveler breathed slowly. Each breath seemed fuller than the one before. Earth, pine, stone, night. The ancient land offered everything, without asking for anything in return. The path entered the first edge of the woodland. The moonlight became softer here. Massive branches reached across the road, weaving together overhead until the silver light writhed only in gentle patches that rested upon moss-covered stones and quiet roots. Towering pines stood like patient guardians. Beside them rose enormous plane trees, whose broad leaves formed an immense canopy. Beneath the stars, their trunks were wide beyond easy measure. Their bark carried pale patterns, shaped by countless seasons of wind and rain. Their roots disappeared deep into the earth, holding the hillside with silent strength. Nothing about these trees suggested haste. They had watched centuries unfold. Kings had come and gone. Cities had flourished. Temples had risen. Empires had disappeared. Still, the trees continued growing one quiet ring at a time. The traveler walked more slowly than ever before. The forest seemed to invite such slowness. Even the breeze moved differently beneath the branches. Outside, across open hills, it had traveled freely. Here, it wandered gently between trunks, brushing softly through needles high. Overhead, before descending, almost without sound, toward the forest's floor. The leaves answered, not loudly, never loudly, only a soft rustling, then stillness. Again the breeze arrived. Again the leaves whispered. Again silence settled. The silence here possessed remarkable depth. It was not the silence of emptiness. It was the silence of countless living things resting together. Roots resting beneath the earth. Moss resting upon stone. Branches resting beneath stars. The traveler resting among them. Everything belonged to one quiet rhythm. Soon the path became narrower. Old limestone gave way to soft earth, covered with pine needles that welcomed every step without the slightest sound. Walking became almost effortless. The forest accepted each footstep, then returned immediately to stillness. The scent grew richer still. Fresh pine needles, sweet resin, cool bark, moist earth where evening dew had begun gathering among roots and fallen leaves. Every breath felt calm. Every breath felt deep. Every breath seemed to dissolve gently into the quiet woodland. Somewhere high above, a single nocturnal cicada clicked softly. The sound was delicate, measured, patient. Click, silence. Click, silence. Nothing hurried its rhythm. Another answered from farther away. Then another. Their voices were never loud enough to disturb the night. Instead, they became part of it. Tiny rhythms woven carefully into the great silence surrounding everything else. The traveler continued deeper into the sacred grove. Long ago, this woodland had been protected. Ancient people had entered quietly, speaking softly beneath these very branches. They believed places like this carried something older than words, something held safely within stone, tree, earth, and sky. Tonight, nothing remained except that quiet feeling itself. No ceremonies, no voices, no footsteps beyond the traveler's own. Only peace, only age, only stillness. The trees seemed larger now. The canopy spread so completely overhead that the stars appeared only through scattered openings between enormous leaves. Those distant lights looked almost like quiet pools of silver resting upon the darkness above. The moon reached between branches whenever space allowed. Its light rested upon moss growing thick along ancient stones. Every surface appeared softened. Nothing seemed sharp. Nothing seemed harsh. Time itself appeared softened here. The traveler came upon a small clearing, nestled quietly among the great trees. At its center stood a low stone bench. Perhaps once it had served as a humble altar. Perhaps it had always simply been a place for peaceful rest. No one could know. Its edges had long ago surrendered to weather. Moss covered nearly every surface with deep green softness. Tiny ferns grew beside its base. The stone itself rested firmly upon the earth, exactly where generations before had placed it. Patient, unmoving, enduring. The traveler approached slowly. A hand rested gently upon the moss. It felt cool, soft, moist with the freshness of night. Beneath, the moss remained solid stone, ancient, reliable, permanent. The traveler sat. The bench welcomed the quiet weight without complaint. Nothing shifted, nothing creaked. The stone had carried countless peaceful moments before this one. It carried another now. The forest surrounded the clearing completely. Towering trunks formed silent circles around the resting place. Above them, the immense canopy spread outward in every direction. Leaf touching leaf, branch meeting branch, until the woodland itself became a vast living ceiling beneath the stars. The traveler leaned back slightly. Breathing slowed naturally. There was nothing left to accomplish, nothing left to seek. The journey itself had gradually become rest. The breeze wandered overhead. It touched pine needles first, then broad plain leaves, then drifted gently downward. The scent of resin became richer, sweet, earthy, calm. The damp soil beneath. The bench released its quiet fragrance into the cooling air. Somewhere nearby, a small owl shifted upon a hidden branch. No cry followed, only another moment of silence. The cicadas continued. Click, silence, click, silence. Their rhythm seemed slower now. Longer pauses separated each delicate sound, as though even they were preparing for the deepest hour of night. The traveler listened without effort. Listening gradually became breathing. Breathing gradually became resting. Resting gradually became simply existing among the trees. The body felt wonderfully heavy, not burdened, grounded, comfortably rooted. The legs rested upon the earth, with the certainty of old stone. The arms became still beside the moss-covered bench. The shoulders settled gently. The breath rose and fell, almost invisibly, like the breeze moving through distant branches. Nothing needed changing. The trees remained. The stars remained. The earth remained. Again the breeze arrived. Again the leaves whispered. Again silence returned. The rhythm repeated. Endlessly. Leaves, silence. Breath, silence. Cicada, silence. The traveler noticed how the limestone path beyond the clearing had cooled completely now. Moonlight rested upon its pale surface, without the slightest trace of remaining warmth. The stone belonged entirely to the night, just as the forest belonged entirely to the night, just as the traveler now belonged entirely to the quiet embrace of the woodland. Far beyond the grove, the hills stood beneath the stars. No wind crossed them. No voices traveled across them. Their silence reached even here, becoming another gentle layer within the peaceful stillness surrounding everything. The distant hills rested. The nearby trees rested. The moss rested. The earth rested. Even time seemed to rest. The moon continued its slow journey westward. Its silver light shifted almost imperceptibly through the canopy. Small pools of brightness moved across roots and stones with astonishing patience. No movement asked to be noticed. Everything happened softly enough to remain almost invisible. The traveler remained upon the ancient bench. Eyes drifted closed. Behind closed eyelids, there was no darkness to fear. Only warmth, only calm, only endless quiet. The scent of pine surrounded every breath. Sweet resin lingered gently in the cool air. Damp earth held the deep memory of rain that had fallen seasons ago. Every fragrance spoke the same quiet. Language, rest, remain, belong. The traveler no longer felt separate from the woodland. The hands rested like weathered stones. The feet rested like roots beneath soft soil. The breathing became the breathing of the forest, itself slow, deep, steady. The breeze entered the canopy. The leaves answered. The traveler breathed. The breeze departed. Silence returned. Again, again, again. The cicadas clicked more slowly. Still. Click. A long, peaceful pause. Click. Another pause. Their quiet rhythm seemed to stretch farther and farther apart, as though the entire forests were gently exhaling into deeper rest. No creature hurried. No branch hurried. No cloud hurried across the stars. Everything trusted the night completely. The traveler trusted it too. The massive trunks surrounding the clearing carried unimaginable years within them. Every ring hidden inside their wood marked another quiet season completed. Spring after spring. Summer after summer. Autumn after autumn. Winter after winter. Thousands of gentle mornings. Thousands of peaceful evenings. Thousands of silent nights beneath these same stars. Nothing permanent had ever feared the passing of time. Stone remained. Tree remained. Earth remained. The traveler rested among them with the same quiet certainty. Breathing became softer, slower, gentler. The chest rose like a small breeze passing. Through pine branches, the chest settled like leaves returning to stillness. Again it rose, again it settled. Nothing more, nothing less. Somewhere far away, beyond the woodland, the sea continued its endless breathing upon distant shores. Its rhythm could no longer be heard. Yet, somehow, it remained present, as though every forest, every hill, every river, every mountain, and every coast belonged to one vast, peaceful breath, moving slowly through ancient Greece. The traveler felt carried by that breath, not moving, simply held, securely, completely. The moss beneath resting hands remained cool. The stone beneath the moss remained strong. The earth beneath the stone remained endless. There was deep comfort in every layer. Soft moss, solid stone, ancient earth, all quietly supporting one peaceful moment. The stars slowly turned overhead. Tiny openings within the canopy revealed familiar constellations drifting westward. Generations had looked upward through these same leaves. Tonight, the stars required no stories. Their quiet light alone was enough. The cicadas spoke. Again. Click. Silence. Click. Silence. Then, longer silence. The first faint hint of approaching dawn rested somewhere far beyond. The eastern hills, invisible beneath the forest canopy. The night remained complete, yet the smallest change had begun. The air felt cooler, denser, heavier. Every scent deepened. Pine, resin, earth, moss. Everything settled lower. Everything became calmer. The traveler breathed once more, slowly, deeply. The breath entered like the forest breeze. The breath departed like the forest breeze. The body remained as steady as the ancient bench, as steady as the limestone beneath the soil, as steady as the great trunks rising quietly toward the stars. Thoughts became fewer, then softer, then lighter, until they seemed no different from the drifting fragrance of pine disappearing gently into the night. Nothing needed remembering, nothing needed imagining. Only this, only here, only now. Leaves whispered once more. The breeze faded. Silence returned. The cicadas clicked one final, gentle rhythm before resting themselves. The distant hills remained completely still. The limestone paths cooled beneath the endless sky. The roots held the earth held the stone. The stone held the traveler. The traveler became as calm as the stone, as patient as the trees, as quiet as the stars. Breathing continued, softly, naturally, effortlessly, like the oldest forest breathing beneath the oldest sky. The night wrapped itself gently around the sacred grove, around the moss-covered bench, around the towering plane trees and fragrant pines, around every ancient root and every weathered stone, until nothing remained except the quiet rhythm of breath. the timeless embrace of the woodland and the endless, peaceful whisper of a world that had always known how to rest.